Tourism across the United States has dropped sharply. International arrivals are down by more than 20% in key states, with some cities seeing visitor spending fall by over $10 billion compared to last year. Airports remain open, but the terminals are quiet. Hotels flash vacancy signs, beaches sit empty, and tour buses leave half full. This is not just a seasonal slump, it is a structural collapse. Rising costs, global tension, weather extremes, and shifting perceptions are draining the lifeblood of local economies built on tourism. In this report, we examine 10 states where tourism is not just slowing, it is breaking. The question is no longer if America's travel map is changing. It is. The only question now is, who will be next? The signs are still flashing in Nevada. The Strip still glows after midnight, but the crowds are thinning. Las Vegas, the center of the state's economic heart, has just posted one of its sharpest tourism declines in over a decade. Strip visitation is down by more than 6%. That is not a small number. That is millions of footsteps missing from sidewalks, slot machines, and showroom seats. Gaming revenue is slipping. Hotel suites that were once booked out months in advance now sit unclaimed on weeknights. Buffets that once needed advance reservations are shutting down early or shuttering entirely. This slowdown is not just about tourists staying home, it is about what happens when a system built on non-stop traffic loses momentum. Nevada is not like most states. It does not have a diverse economic engine to fall back on. Tourism is not a side sector, it is the core. When visitors stop flying in, the entire machinery slows down. Restaurant shifts dry up. Entertainment acts scale back. Nightlife, shows, tours, everything that fuels the 24-hour economy starts to contract. Local real estate cools as investors grow cautious. The rideshare queues get shorter. Convention halls echo more than they used to. And the real concern? This does not look like a seasonal dip. Analysts are warning it could mark the beginning of a long-term reset, one driven by changing consumer habits, inflation, and a reshuffling of global travel priorities. Las Vegas has always counted on resilience, bouncing back from recessions and reputational shifts. But this time feels different. Because Nevada is a state built almost entirely on the idea of attraction. Its identity, its workforce, and its infrastructure are tuned to serve one thing: visitors. When fewer arrive, the ripple effect does not just hit hotel lobbies or casino floors. It hits neighborhoods, schools, service providers, and secondary industries. A slowdown in tourism weakens sales tax collections, compresses wages, and drains public services. The illusion that the lights never go out begins to crack, and people start asking harder questions. If current trends hold, Nevada may be forced to reconsider what it stands for economically. For decades, growth was tied to entertainment and spectacle. Now, it is tied to survival. Without a meaningful rebound, the state risks becoming over-leveraged in an industry that no longer behaves as predictably as it once did. The Golden State is still shining, but it is starting to lose its reflection. California, one of the most visited places in the world, is showing clear signs of tourism fatigue. International travel is softening, especially from its second-largest market, Canada. Cities that once thrived on consistent visitor flow, like San Francisco, Anaheim, and parts of Los Angeles, are now reporting sharp drops in bookings. Hotels that once posted premium rates are offering steep discounts. Entire neighborhoods built around tourism, from Fisherman's Wharf to Hollywood, are seeing more for-lease signs than camera flashes. Even with over $157 billion in tourism spending in 2024, the early numbers from 2025 paint a sobering picture. The slowdown is not just international. Domestic travel is also cooling, in part due to the rising cost of living. California has become an expensive place to visit, not just to live in. From high gas prices to inflated meal costs, even basic tourist experiences now come with a premium that many travelers are unwilling to pay. Theme parks like Disneyland and Universal Studios have introduced new pricing tiers and variable date tickets, but even those adjustments are struggling to maintain consistent crowds. Coastal towns like Santa Barbara, Carmel, and Laguna Beach are also seeing shorter stays and fewer out-of-state visitors. Wine Country in Napa and Sonoma is quietly reporting softer booking trends, particularly among international guests who once made up a significant portion of midweek travel. Across the state, fewer flights are arriving from key global markets. And there is another factor at play: perception. Safety concerns in major urban centers, visible homelessness, and persistent reports of retail theft are starting to change how potential visitors see California. Travel blogs, Reddit threads, and social media reels show a different version of the state: less glamour, more grit. That shift in reputation is hard to reverse, especially when competing destinations offer similar experiences without the baggage. California's broader challenge is that, like Nevada, it has shaped large parts of its economy around being seen. From national parks to pop culture landmarks, it is designed to draw people in. But when that magnetism fades, so too does the revenue that supports local infrastructure. From airport transit to public parks, everything becomes a little less maintained, a little less efficient. If the state cannot reverse this trend, the long-term risk is not just economic, it is cultural. Because California is more than a destination, it is a symbol. And when the world stops coming to see it, the world also stops seeing what it represents. Next, we move to Florida, a state that has always sold sunshine, but now finds itself under an economic cloud. Florida still looks like a postcard, but the numbers tell a different story. Palm trees sway, beaches sparkle, and the theme parks remain open. But something has changed beneath the surface. Florida, long considered a titan of American tourism, is suddenly showing signs of real economic vulnerability. The state has historically relied heavily on international travelers, particularly from Canada. But in 2025, that pipeline collapsed. Canadian travel bookings for the spring and summer fell by more than 70%. That is not a decline, it is a rupture. With that drop, Florida now faces an estimated $2.1 billion in lost tourism spending. 14,000 tourism-related jobs are on the line. From Clearwater to Naples, resorts that once boasted full occupancy are offering steep discounts. Restaurants that used to have wait lists now shut their kitchens early. Even in major tourist hubs like Orlando and Miami, hotel occupancy rates are trending downward. Theme parks, despite aggressive advertising campaigns, are struggling to match last year's foot traffic. The local economy, built on a foundation of sunshine and fantasy, is feeling the tremors. What makes Florida's situation even more precarious is its lack of a backup plan. Unlike more diversified states, Florida's economic engine is deeply entangled with tourism dollars. When those dollars stop flowing, the consequences ripple across housing, transportation, retail, and service sectors. And here's the critical point: domestic travel alone cannot fill the gap. International visitors stay longer and spend more. Without them, economic math simply does not work. There are several factors at play: rising travel costs, global instability, changing currency values, and stricter U.S. entry requirements have made travel less attractive for many. But perception also plays a role. Hurricanes, political tensions, and infrastructure strain have made headlines. Even when the beaches are open and the sun is shining, many travelers are choosing alternatives like Mexico or the Caribbean, where affordability and ease of entry give them more value. This is not just about tourism, it is about long-term sustainability. When Florida loses visitors, it also loses momentum. And right now, the state is learning just how fragile its image and economy really are. New York is still iconic, but fewer people are showing up to see it. In 2025, city officials revised their annual tourism forecast downward, from 67 million expected visitors to 64 million. That 3 million visitor gap is more than just foot traffic. It represents billions in lost revenue across Broadway theaters, museums, hotels, and small businesses. But it is the kind of visitors missing that raises concern. 2 million of the absent travelers were expected to come from overseas. International visitors are not casual sightseers. They are high-value spenders. They stay longer, shop more, and support sectors that do not survive on domestic traffic alone. For a city where nearly half of all tourism spending comes from international arrivals, this is a direct hit, and it is one that cannot be disguised by summer weekend foot traffic or local tourism campaigns. The missing link is not interest, it is confidence. The reasons for this decline are layered. Rising global inflation and a strong U.S. dollar have made trips to New York more expensive for foreign tourists. Safety concerns have also played a role. Headlines about crime, sanitation issues, and transit delays have shifted public sentiment. While the numbers may not reflect a total collapse, they do indicate a pattern. Tourists are not just reconsidering New York, they are already redirecting their plans. The drop in visitors has real-world consequences. Tour guides are seeing fewer bookings. Broadway shows are running at lower capacity. Museums and art galleries are reporting softer attendance. Restaurants that once relied on international traffic, especially in Midtown and Soho, are now watching margins shrink. Even hotels in Manhattan, which once charged premium rates for compact rooms, are adjusting prices just to stay competitive. What happens next is crucial. A city as economically complex as New York cannot afford to let tourism erode without consequences. consequences. The sector fuels not only jobs, but tax revenue that supports transit, sanitation, and public safety itself. If international visitors continue to stay away, the long-term effects could reach well beyond the theater district and into the fabric of city services. Hawaii looks like paradise from the air, but on the ground, the cracks are starting to show. In 2025, the islands are experiencing one of the sharpest tourism declines they have seen in years. Visitor numbers from international markets, particularly Japan and Canada, have dropped significantly. These two countries have historically made up a large portion of Hawaii's high-spending visitors, and their absence is more than noticeable. Fewer tourists are coming, and those who do are spending less. Average daily spending has declined across every major island. Even traditionally strong destinations like Oahu and Maui are now facing record-low hotel occupancy rates, numbers not seen since the post-pandemic slump. The reasons are layered. First, rising airfare to the islands is deterring long-distance travel. Second, recent wildfires, particularly the devastating events in Maui, have not only damaged infrastructure, but also shaken traveler confidence. Third, local sentiment is shifting. There is a growing resistance among Hawaiians to over-tourism, prompting tighter rental laws, fewer short-term accommodations, and more environmental regulations aimed at preserving the fragile ecosystem. These changes, while understandable from a sustainability standpoint, have compounded the economic fallout. Hawaii's economy is deeply reliant on tourism, which accounts for over 20% of its gross domestic product. When that engine stalls, the entire state feels the impact. Tour guides, surf instructors, hotel staff, and restaurant workers have all reported fewer hours and thinner paychecks. In more remote areas, some families have begun relocating altogether, seeking stability elsewhere. And on islands where tourism is the main employer, the loss of steady visitors means community-wide consequences: shrinking school enrollments, slower business turnover, and reduced public service funding. Unlike larger mainland states, Hawaii has limited fallback options. Its geographic isolation means it cannot easily pivot to manufacturing or logistics sectors. The tourism drop is not just a dip in leisure travel, it is a full-blown economic shock. Without a resurgence in international arrivals or a significant policy shift to balance tourism with sustainability, the islands may face a prolonged period of economic fragility. And now, as we move inland, we see a different kind of strain. A state that once rose on growth and hospitality is now facing environmental and economic pushback. Arizona still offers its sun, deserts, and trails, but fewer people are showing up to experience them. In 2025, visitor spending in Arizona dropped by nearly 7%. The numbers become more troubling when we look at international travel, which declined by over 10% compared to the previous year. One of the biggest factors behind this downturn is extreme heat. In the last 12 months, Arizona has experienced multiple record-breaking heat waves, especially during peak summer months. Tourists are choosing cooler or more temperate regions, avoiding places where hiking or sightseeing becomes dangerous after midday. Another major contributor is rising airfare. Flights into Phoenix and Tucson have become more expensive, especially for travelers coming from Canada and Europe. For many, the cost no longer justifies the experience. In response, tour operators around Sedona and Flagstaff have reduced services. Luxury resorts, particularly those around Scottsdale, are operating below capacity. Short-term rentals that once dominated the hospitality scene now sit vacant for longer stretches. Even high-end properties are slashing prices to attract bookings that no longer come automatically. Arizona has also been cracking down on overuse of natural resources. Water restrictions, land access permits, and new regulations have been introduced to combat environmental strain. While these policies are important for long-term sustainability, they also introduce friction into the visitor experience. Some tourists now find it harder to access popular destinations like Antelope Canyon, Horseshoe Bend, and parts of the Grand Canyon due to permit caps and limited availability. The broader issue is that Arizona has expanded rapidly over the last decade. Real estate development, hospitality investment, and infrastructure were all built on the assumption of continuous tourism growth. That assumption is now under pressure. Cities like Phoenix and Tucson are facing slower than expected seasonal returns, and towns like Page, which rely almost entirely on national park traffic, are already reporting business closures. Seasonal employment is tightening. Local businesses that depend on warm weather travelers, from outfitters to restaurants, are scaling back. Without a clear plan to adapt, Arizona's tourism downturn may stretch beyond a single bad season. The warning signs are not just environmental, they are deeply economic. Louisiana's streets still echo with music, but the silence behind the scenes is growing louder. In 2025, one of America's most culturally rich states is confronting a harsh tourism reality. New Orleans, the crown jewel of Louisiana's tourism industry, has seen a decline of more than 20% in international arrivals this year. The drop is not isolated. It is affecting major events, small businesses, and neighborhoods alike. Festivals like Mardi Gras and Jazz Fest are reporting smaller crowds, not because demand has vanished, but because fewer out-of-state and foreign visitors are making the trip. Hotels across the city are struggling to fill rooms, with many reporting the worst spring season since the pandemic era. Restaurant bookings in the French Quarter are down. Iconic attractions like steamboat tours and historic mansions are running on shorter hours or have reduced staff. Tourism powers more than 200,000 jobs in Louisiana. That includes everyone from street performers to food vendors, hotel clerks to event organizers. When the visitors stop coming, these jobs begin to evaporate. Multiple factors are contributing to this downturn. Rising crime rates in popular tourist areas have become a major deterrent, amplified by news coverage and viral videos. At the same time, extreme summer heat and growing hurricane threats make Louisiana a less attractive option for warm weather travelers. The cost of insurance for both travelers and businesses has gone up. That additional burden makes hosting large events or operating group tours riskier and more expensive than ever. Other U.S. destinations are also pulling travelers away. Cities like Nashville and Austin are offering safer, more controlled environments with similar music and culinary appeal. In that competitive landscape, perception matters. And right now, Louisiana is being perceived as riskier, not just in terms of safety, but in reliability. Flight cancellations, weather disruptions, and rising costs have chipped away at what was once a dependable tourism model. Outside New Orleans, other cities like Baton Rouge, Shreveport, and Lafayette are feeling the ripple effects. Regional tourism, heritage sites, and seasonal festivals are all reporting reduced attendance. The result is a fragile ecosystem, one that cannot sustain itself without consistent foot traffic and external spending. Without intervention or a strong turnaround, Louisiana risks becoming a case study in how cultural legacy alone cannot protect a vulnerable tourism economy. Missouri is not often at the center of the tourism conversation, but that makes its recent decline even more telling. In 2025, key tourism hubs across the state, Branson, Kansas City, and St. Louis, have reported marked drops in visitor spending. Hotel occupancy in some areas is down by as much as 12%. For a state that relies heavily on regional drive-in tourism, the change is already reshaping local economies. Branson, long known as a family-friendly entertainment destination, is seeing fewer group tours and a shrinking audience for its legacy music shows. Theaters that once operated year-round are reducing schedules. Performers are retiring without replacement. Bus tours that once defined the city's peak season are being canceled at a pace not seen in over a decade. While Branson's infrastructure remains intact, its audience is aging, and younger travelers are not filling the gap. Attractions once designed to accommodate hundreds now operate at half capacity. In St. Louis, the issue is more layered. While tourism assets like the Gateway Arch and city museums remain open, public safety concerns are weighing heavily on visitor sentiment. Headlines related to crime and urban decay are influencing travel decisions, especially for families and large groups. Convention organizers have begun shifting events to smaller or more secure cities, creating a knock-on effect in the downtown hospitality sector. Even popular restaurants and retail districts like the Del Mar Loop are noticing thinner crowds and shorter weekends. Kansas City, despite ongoing development, is also under pressure. The recently expanded airport was intended to attract more tourism and business travel, but early returns have been underwhelming. High fuel costs and inflation are discouraging families from taking road trips, which are Missouri's lifeline. Weekend travel from surrounding states is down. Smaller towns like Herman and Hannibal, once reliant on wine festivals, historical reenactments, and river cruises, are experiencing unseasonably long, slow periods. What makes Missouri's situation distinct is its dependence on short-term, budget-conscious travelers. When economic uncertainty rises, states like Missouri are the first to feel the drop, and as travel habits shift toward more selective, experience-focused planning, Missouri's middle-ground tourism market finds itself increasingly left behind. Illinois still has its skyline, but the visitors who once filled its streets are turning away. In 2025, Illinois, especially Chicago, is facing a tourism downturn that is deeper than it first appears. International tourism to the city has declined by over 14%, and the drop is already taking a toll on the broader state economy. Hotels, particularly in downtown Chicago, are operating well below capacity. Conventions that once brought thousands of business travelers are now being rerouted to other cities, citing both cost and perception as major deciding factors. The challenges are not limited to Chicago. Downstate cities like Springfield, Peoria, and Rockford are also struggling to regain momentum lost during the pandemic years. Key attractions, from presidential museums to historic sites along the Route 66 corridor, are seeing fewer bookings and more sporadic attendance. Many local tourism-dependent businesses, small inns, antique shops, guided tours, are facing real uncertainty about how to sustain operations through a weakened season. Some have already closed, unable to manage costs without a steady flow of visitors. One of the primary deterrents is cost. Illinois is one of the most heavily taxed states in the country. Hotel taxes, food service charges, parking fees, and local transportation costs are higher than in neighboring states like Indiana, Wisconsin, and Missouri. Budget-conscious travelers are doing the math and increasingly choosing to spend their money elsewhere. Even when visitors do come, they are spending less and staying for shorter durations, further compressing already thin profit margins for local businesses. There's also the matter of perception. While some safety metrics have improved, headlines about gun violence and urban crime continue to shape how outsiders view Chicago. These stories often travel faster and stick longer than official statistics. For international tourists or families planning leisure trips, safety concerns weigh heavily in destination decisions. Even repeat travelers are beginning to question whether the experience still justifies the cost and risk. The ripple effects are wide. Hospitality jobs are disappearing. Cultural programming tied to tourism revenue is being cut back. Tax receipts are shrinking. Illinois still has world-class architecture, cuisine, and music, but if it cannot restore confidence and affordability, the state risks being bypassed in favor of simpler, cheaper, safer alternatives. Texas, long known for doing things bigger, is now watching its biggest attractions shrink in real time. In 2025, the state is experiencing a measurable drop in tourism that spans its cities, small towns, and signature events. In Austin, hotel occupancy in the downtown area fell by over 11% during the spring season. That may sound manageable, but for a city whose economy thrives on live music, tech conventions, and food festivals, it is a sign of weakening momentum. Popular music venues report lighter crowds. Iconic events like South by Southwest have noted softening ticket sales and fewer international attendees. Across the state, tourism infrastructure is still being funded and promoted, but the return on that investment is becoming harder to justify. San Antonio's famous Riverwalk has seen fewer large group tours. Convention bookings are down. In Houston, business travel, a major revenue source, has softened considerably. Flight traffic into the city has slowed, and international arrivals are below expectations. A pattern is emerging. Fewer events, fewer travelers, and more vacancies in places once considered solid bets. Hotel operators and local business owners are beginning to express concern about what the second half of the year might bring. Smaller destinations are also suffering. Towns like Fredericksburg, Waco, and Marfa, once magnets for weekend tourism and boutique hospitality, are reporting thinner margins and shorter stays. Many of these communities built their seasonal calendars around a steady flow of regional visitors. Now, with rising fuel costs, extreme temperatures, and overcrowding complaints, those same visitors are opting for less strenuous alternatives or canceling altogether. Climate instability has not helped. Record-breaking heat waves, drought conditions, and recurring power grid failures have made global headlines. For families planning summer vacations, these factors have started to influence travel decisions. The idea of being caught in triple-digit temperatures with unreliable air conditioning is enough to turn potential visitors away. Add the increasing costs of accommodations, dining, and fuel, and Texas suddenly feels less like a sure bet. What makes Texas's case so compelling is the disconnect. The state continues to market itself confidently, yet on the ground, the experience is becoming more fragile. Without a recalibration of both expectations and infrastructure, Texas may find its once unshakable tourism appeal fading faster than anyone expected. That brings us to the end of today's breakdown. If you followed the story this far, you clearly care about the bigger picture, so make sure to check out the other videos on the channel.